All of us have a comfort zone in life, especially when it comes to the things we do for fun. But some of the most fun you'll ever have and the most lessons you'll learn is when you break out of that, which is why earlier this year, I began a journey to spend a month at a time playing each class in Guild Wars 2 other than Warrior, since 2/3 of my in-game time was spent on my Warrior main. So, for the month of April, I threw a blindfold on and went into battle with voices in my head to experience life as a Revenant and report on my journey and my lessons learned. But this time, I added a twist, a goal and an extra challenge. The goal, to fully complete my Revenant's world exploration in Core Tyria finally. The new challenge, ignore the meta conversation entirely. Play each elite spec with no build videos, no meta battle, no nothing. I had to figure out my own effective build, play around with it, and pick out a favorite by the end of the month. Unlike Guardian, I actually had a solid setup to begin with, at least. Many of you on the Guardian video recommended running Celestial gear, and I just so happened to already have set up a Celestial Herald build for PvE at some point and entirely forgot I did. So that was an early win in the column. I didn't have any runes or sigils and made a mental note to pick some up. I didn't. I'm sorry. Starting with 49 hours played on my Revenant and 48% map completion, I grabbed a cup of coffee and got started on the month. I decided to roll with what I already had and started knocking out some weekly Wizard Vault stuff and running some events with my Celestial Herald build. I was using dual sword with a staff swap and pretty much just found myself only using sword. I didn't really like the staff all that much. Sword was a lot of fun, reminding me a bit of my Willbender gameplay, teleporting around. I was playing with Assassin and Dragon stances. Assassin is as fun as I remember it from past experience, with the lifesteals and the duplication of attacks allowing for some really cool bursting. Dragon stance, however, which is the core stance for Herald, was my biggest gripe in this whole challenge. Dragon stance was really boring. I'm sure there's probably some ideal rotation of these stances that I didn't figure out in my limited time by myself, but it ended up making me feel like a more mobile version of a banner warrior with a less fun primary weapon rotation. I essentially felt like I was constantly keeping Facet of Darkness and Facet of Strength up at all times, and occasionally chaining Facet of Elements into Elemental Blast for some quick damage. That's it. So after a few hours of gameplay and completing my weeklies, I decided to switch specs before going after some map completion. I switched over to running Renegade with shortbow and keeping dual wield swords with the Renegade and Assassin stances, and set out into Core Tyria. I enjoyed shortbow a lot, actually, even though I would continue to struggle with the limited range for the entire rest of the month. The moveset felt great, and I could do a good amount of damage to pull enemies, and if they stayed alive, swap to swords and mince them up in no time at all. Once I took the time to experiment with the Renegade abilities, I quite liked it in theory. Sadly, with low tier PvE, I was ending fights too quickly to really pull off much combo action with different spirits, and it could sometimes become a little boring because all I had to do was group up the enemies, drop Razor Claw's Rage and Ice Razor's Ire, and maybe a shortbow AoE, and usually almost everything was gone. At the same time, because the fights ended so soon, I never had much energy to do any fun, bigger combos, so it really wasn't a great fit for me. Though I will say I did do the Verdant Brink meta event with Renegade and enjoyed the combo ability much more in a larger combat event like that. But once I went back to solo PvE, it was underwhelming again. I really am learning that I prefer a very active, mobile playstyle in Guild Wars 2 these days. I think years of Zerker Warrior gameplay has poisoned my brain to be a symbol monkey constantly banging in my head, and if my APM is too low, monkey sad. By this point, I'd only gotten to around 55% map completion, and I really needed to find something that I could get into a rhythm with. So I checked the results of a poll I made that you wonderful people voted in, and found that the majority said Herald was your favorite Revenant spec, so I was determined to give it another try. Went back to it this time with Hammer and Shortbow to mix it up from the first time, and ran Centaur and Dragon stances. Hammer confused the heck out of me for a few minutes because I kept forgetting it was a ranged weapon on Revenant, because of course it is. Hammers are obviously ranged weapons. Regardless, Hammer was a lot of fun. Comboing Coalescence of Ruin and drop the Hammer together for a sweet 2-5-2 punch, and then cleaning it up with a good old phase smash afterwards felt really good. The Hammer moveset itself is really freaking cool. Unfortunately, I still just didn't vibe with the Dragon stance. It's not bad by any means, it just doesn't scratch the itch. It's too passive for my liking. And Centaur stance was odd. I really didn't like Centaur stance right out of the gate and probably didn't try hard enough to really use it effectively and break through the awkwardness, but I just struggled so much with making sure the tablet was up in the right area and remembering that my skills were based on the tablet location that it just ended up being a waste and getting me in way more trouble than it was worth. It just felt so clunky to me. Based on the overall skills, it's obviously more of a support thing, and I was doing solo PvE as well, so it's not really a surprise that I didn't enjoy it for this challenge. I could easily see this being useful, though I'm not sure statistically how good it is, for content like raids or strikes where you're stacking up in the same locations, where you can place your tablet and know it's going to be effective. It seems pretty logical to me. After smashing out another 10% total Core Tyria completion with this, I was sitting around 65% map completion and still not vibing with any Revenant playstyle I tried. At this point, there was just one elite spec left, and I was really hoping I'd enjoy it more than the others because I had a lot of this month's challenge left and honestly wasn't really having a ton of fun yet. I was worried that this month was about to be a mind-numbing slog towards world completion. An awful lot was riding on Vindicator. I kept the short bow because that was just my go-to backup weapon at this point and slotted in the Assassin and Alliance stances and got right to it. I decided to really push it about as far as I could with Core Tyria and hit up Frostgorge Sound for some higher level enemies. I tested out Axe Mace for a little while, but didn't really like it that much as it wasn't very complementary to either of my stances, so I swapped over to Greatsword. And let me tell you, Greatsword and Alliance stance turned up the heat and I was firing on all cylinders. Offensive jump dodging alone from Vindicator felt really great, but combining this with the feel-good moveset of Greatsword and the balanced approach of the Alliance stance, everything started to click finally. Archimoros' stance was a blast, letting me AoE pull, give myself quickness, and absolutely shred enemies with greatsword moves in no time at all. And I found I could just even use the elite spear skill to just pull or even outright take down other enemies off in the distance that I wasn't actively fighting. When I got into hot water, swapping over to St. Victor allowed me to crank heals and could bail me out pretty well, and then immediately swap back to keep the pressure on. Most importantly, Alliance stance felt so active and engaging to play. The actions per minute I don't think is anywhere near my ADHD level Berserker warrior, but I still always felt like I had things to do rather than just sit there and let my weapon skills come off cooldown while my energy was being used for passive buffs. My build I ended the month with and will probably keep playing is Devastation, Invocation, and Vindicator in a 3-2-3, 2-2-1, and 1-2-1 format on the trees. I was able to meet pretty much every challenge I tried with this build, including solo clearing a group event champion boss, though it wasn't easy and took quite a while. Vindicator flowed well, felt actionable, and performed very well. It was definitely the hero of the month. It managed to carry me all the way from 65% to 100% map completion, alongside my wonderful Skyscale mount, getting me to my third Core Tyria map completion at long last. For my month on Revenant, I would give Herald a 2-star, Renegade a 3-star, and Vindicator a 5-star. Compared to Guardian, overall, the Revenant felt a lot more unique than the Willbender or just Guardian in general did to me. The differences between these elite specs is very, very pronounced. Herald seems to be all about passive support, Renegade is about combinations of abilities to maximize your effectiveness, while Vindicator is about flexibility and knowing when to use what, or just using it all the dang time. Overall, I would place this above Guardian, but still below Warrior on my super unmathematical scale of enjoyment. But I'd say only by a little bit. Each class has one spec I really disliked, Bladesworn for Warrior and Herald for Revenant, but Renegade is a 3 for me, where Spellbreaker is a 4, going towards 5 for me. I also like the overall warrior weapon movesets more. However, I really don't like, and it feels extremely limiting to me, to be locked into utility skills. I really enjoy classes like the warrior or guardian being able to bring out that utility skill that works for that situation, rather than having that locked into a stance you choose overall, like Revenant. I absolutely see myself using Revenant as a solid alt character, especially for Core Tyria events now that I have map completion done, once I'm done with the rest of these challenges this year. This last challenge video here, where I played Willbender for a month, really cemented what a fun idea this is, and I'm excited to dig into Engineer next month. The Willbender video's got some great traps to avoid if you're looking to give this a run, as well as just some insight into what it was like to culture shock myself with it. Check it out, and I know you'll enjoy it.